So what happens when you have hundreds, thousands, or maybe even millions of events that need investigated? Well, it probably means you need to tune your data sources a little bit, but realistically that takes time and thus money. What I'm really hearing is you need an automation framework that helps you deal with all those events. In this video, I'm talking through how to use event rules to do just that. As I mentioned in the introduction, event rules are one of my favorite features within ReflexSOAR, and that's because they really dramatically impact your overall queue and experience because it's a simple form of automation, but it either helps you do things like auto merge into cases, auto dismiss, auto add tags, auto change severity, and it's just an extremely effective and efficient tool. So much so that our own internal MSSP, which uses this, we offer MSSP for many clients. When we're using this, we've been able to cut back on FTEs, or not cut back, but not hire new ones, because this has helped us so much. And as a result, we end up having hundreds of event rules. So what are these and how do they actually work? Let's go through a couple simple use cases. The queue I have in front of me is not, the data is not tuned, the IDS isn't tuned, there's really nothing been done on this, so I have really tens of thousands of things in here that are, well, hopefully just noise. So I need to go through and figure out how to handle these. For example, this exploit local Active Directory Federation services replication. Well, the problem with this is it's benign. And I know it's benign because 10.0044 and 10.0041, those are my assets. They're both part of ADFS, and they're supposed to talk to each other like this. So what you would probably have to do is hopefully know your environment element, you investigate these, and you realize you have thousands of events pertaining to these machines talking for business as usual. So I need to fix that. Now, I could just check this, dismiss it, create it to a case, but the problem is they're just going to keep coming back because it's normal and I haven't actually fixed the IDS rules. Granted, if I go fix the data source, it does take some time, and especially if you're doing this for like remote clients or assets, you might not even have the ability to fix it. But there's an easy way to handle this. So what I really want to say is if it's dealing with these two assets for this specific IDS signature, I don't care. And let's see how hard that is to do. I'm going to click on Create an Event Rule. And in this, it's going to automatically create a name. I'll just leave it as the default. It's going to set it as active. I can add a description in here if I want. You know, traffic between known ADFS servers is legitimate. I might reuse this description here in a second. I'll show you. This is really cool. Run retroactive after creation, which means once I create the event rule, it's going to run it backwards in time against any events that are still in a new state, which means what you'll see in a second is it's going to auto handle those events for me so I don't have to do more than one step. All right. I can set a time limit on this, how long I want it to be good for, or typically just my preference is I just set everything not to expire. Because in the event rules page, we actually track when they were last hit, if the rule is actually doing something. And so over time, it's really easy to go to the left panel where it says event rules and just sort and show all the event rules that aren't firing. Because if they haven't fired in, say, a week, a month, whatever it is, you can disable them or get rid of them. So I'm just going to set this not to expire. And here is where the power starts to come in. We have the Reflex Query Language. There's a help guide. You can click here or here. So we have documents built in. And it will go through and show examples of how to use this, such as what I'm trying to do right now is say something like, if this IP and this IP is being used in conjunction with this signature, I don't care. So I don't really care about ports, so I can take those out. I could keep this, but really I don't really care for this rule. And then I can hit test. That confirms that this is going to match the event that I was just looking at. Now I can be a bit more granular in here. Like I could, instead of doing observables, I can actually pop this out and do the raw log. This pops open the event drawer so I can see all the original data. So really what I want is if the source IP is this, and the destination IP, which is down below, is this, I don't want it. So all right, let's click off the drawer and let's change this rule a little bit. So I'm going to say raw log source IP equals that, and raw log destination IP equals that. I'm going to retest to make sure this still works. It did not. I got a typo. Look at that. So it's kind of intuitive in here that if you type this query wrong and it doesn't work, it kind of softly lets you know, hey, it's not matching anymore, and you'll tweak it a little bit. I'll show some more advanced use cases here in a second. So, and if I wanted to see the logs that match in more than one event, I would hit this, include results, and research. Go to next. And now, if RQL finds a match, what do you want to do with it? Well, in my case, I want to dismiss it. It's really a false positive, and it's a false positive because if two ADFS systems replicate to each other, they cause a false positive. This alert is only significant if it's from unknown assets trying to replicate ADFS data. Put something like that in there. I could technically also add tags as, this is benign. I don't know why you do that, but the actions behind event rules when they hit is either to dismiss, auto merge into a case, auto change the severity of a rule, add tags, and then obviously dismiss. For this one, I just went dismiss. Gives me a nice little review, and when I hit create, it's going to go through there, fire off the event rule. It's now going backwards in time and should apply to this rule set so that in a second, if I refresh the page, these should be gone from the queue. So I'll give that just a second. We'll see if that works, and I'll refresh and see what happens. So now you'll notice I've refreshed the page, and lo and behold, those Active Directory replication alerts are no longer there. Not only are they not there, but if new events come in, they will be auto-dismissed. Therefore, this queue isn't going to see them anymore in a new status. They're always going to come in and just be marked as dismissed. So I fixed the ones in the queue, and I've auto-fixed new ones coming in. I'll still get the alert, but only if it's not dealing with those two IP addresses per the way I wrote the event rule. Starting to see the power of the event rules? This is how we've dealt with tremendous volumes of events. We've been able to very quickly put in rules to automatically handle them. A lot of false positive reduction is very effective with this. So let's kind of show a few more kind of advanced use cases with event rules. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to show you where I've got a vulnerability scanner in my environment that's at 10.100.061. And you notice here, I've got, almost 40,000 alerts fired that are really related in some fashion to my vulnerability scanner. So I need to clean that up. Now, I can go in and I can create rules. Again, I'll go in here. Let's just do something like this. I'm going to make this more generic. I won't create this one. Just watch this. So keep it, doesn't expire. And I could say something like, well, if the observable has to do with that IP, dismiss. I probably should get rid of all in this case. And really I could just, do something like this. Except for in a live environment, you probably have more than one scanner or some type of authorized device that might make kind of false alerts. And so I kind of would like to have a little better way of going about this. And so I'm going to close out of this for a second. And what I've got in our Intel lists, I actually created an Intel list for authorized scanners. Now, in that is just a single value right now, the one scanner that I'm aware of. And so what I could do is in this queue, I could create a rule that says something like ignore authorized scanners. Now, on the query, I could come in here and I could say something like this. Expand my observables. This is a special function. And if the data type is an IP address and it's in the Intel, this is the value of the observable, this list, and if that's true, so if it's an IP and the value of the observable is in the HA lab authorized scanners, it matched, now I could go ahead and dismiss it. And I can start to get rid of those, and then later, I'm not going to save this one, if I were to be like, well, for whatever reason, 10.100.0.104 is also part of the authorized scanner, I can just do add to list, select the HA authorized scanners, and now all my rules dynamically got those sets of IPs or any new IPs that you add to the list. So it's a bit more dynamic in nature. So we use those for good lists, benign lists like authorized scanners, but you also can do things like pull down dynamic lists, known bad malware hashes, phishing domains, and so on. So Intel lists could be used to tag with event rules matched in an Intel list, or to auto-merge certain thing to cases like this domain deals with phishing. Let's create a case with a template of phishing and send it to a certain team, right? There's a second event rule case. I want to show a few more capabilities though, so I'm going to pick a different event now. Let's find something that has to do with Windows here. Not Suricata. There we go. I want something dealing with Windows data. Here we go. AV relevant files. Now, in here, if I look at the raw event, you'll notice it's flagging on task lists. Now, I don't have this rule up in front of me, but I think what it's saying is PowerShell or something is dealing with something potentially malicious. Task lists, again, depending if this wasn't the one built into Windows, could be bad. Looks like it's an AMC scan, so an anti-malware scan. But in here, this is a lab. This one's not currently being attacked, and if I were to investigate this, this is probably a false positive. So what I could do is try to create some rules in here about maybe saying something like, let's do task list here. Maybe that's legit, and I want to ignore that or tag on it or merge the case. Again, you kind of get the feel here. Well, let's do an event rule, and let's just see some special RQL syntax I can do for this. For one, I'm just going to say we're looking for tasklist.exe match body process name. So let's change this. Raw log match body. I already forgot. Process.name. Process.name equals, and I could do something like tasklist.exe. Let's see if this works. Ooh, okay, simple enough, and I could set action to dismiss and move on, but what if it was uppercase T? Test. That fails. Windows isn't really case sensitive, but what we'll see is some malware or different forms of obfuscation. They'll do random uppercase, lowercase to try to hide. And so the raw source might have been task list with a capital T, and if I were to have the rule like this, it wouldn't have matched. But here comes in things like mutators. I could say, you know what, I don't care what this is, just lowercase it, please. And so now, test, if the raw was all uppercase task list, when it gets lowercase, it's going to look like this. And mutators are super powerful, and there's a lot of them. Because what I can do is I can go in here and I can do RegExp, well, this is matches, mutators are here. I can calculate the length of a field, the count. I can lowercase it. If it's a URL that's been fanged so that you can't accidentally click on it, I could try to refang it. Base64 decode, extract, URL decode, and geo lookups, and all sorts of, is it a private IP? Is it a global for like IPv6? And we're constantly adding new mutators. So between various methods of doing expressions, equals, greater than, we support things like regex, contains, ends, insider notation for subnet checks, begins with, ends with. So rather than doing some fancy regex, if I were dealing with executable, I could just say something like ends with. Oh, and ends with, notice it's in gray. So this kind of visually lets you know that I messed something up. And again, this is not a mutator, this is an expression, so it replaces the equal sign. So ends with, and maybe I still want the lowercase. So maybe lowercase it, and then make sure it ends with task list and still matches. So when it comes to event rules, we can select what actions we want to automatically take, and we can match certain events very selectively with reg expressions, with mutators, with all sorts of capabilities, intel lists, and that's why it's one of my favorite features. So I hope the automation of event lists helps solve a lot of problems. I don't know, things like, alert triage, false positive reduction, auto merging and sending certain things to cases that certain teams select, adding tags that give the analyst feedback about what the events are, changing severities, and event rules. They're awesome. Check them out.